Rhino, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
You have to turn the camera off because it's that theater of the mind thing.
That's right. It's the theater of the mind. Wow.
So if we all saw each other, it's just not the same.
It's almost like you're a wordsmith.
Yeah, I've heard that. I have heard that.
You're like as if you were like the editor of a magazine.
I wouldn't go that far.
If only we had another editor of a magazine. The voice you hear there is Tony Cook. Geez, if only we had another editor of another well-known model railroad magazine in the studio with us, we'd have it'd be like a bookends.
Well,
that would be amazing.
That would be amazing, but I wanted to first just kind of ask him how he's doing because this was my semi-annual. We're about, as we record this, we're about halfway through 2021, and I usually go in and freshen up the shrimp in the green room, and I spray something on that stain on the couch, and I make sure that your picture is adjusted level, Lionel, so as everyone's sitting there, they see that one shot of you at the microphone,
Yeah.
And the shrimp were gone.
Oh, Otto, do you have anything to say about that?
No, but I'm always really pleasantly surprised that you always put out the green shrimp for me. That's always a nice touch.
Yeah. The mint flavored shrimp. So
neither the shrimp nor the couch were green when this started.
Yeah, that's right.
Years ago.
Because Chris Stilson told me you got to try the green shrimp. They're the best.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. We have to.
Well, we can get through the podcast and we'll get you some, Alka-Seltzer or something. You'll be fine.
We have to do another.
We know I chugged.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I chugged 2 beers and did a pack of gummy bears before I came in the studio here. So let's see what happens.
Ooh! Let me go get a bucket out of the mop room. Yeah.
And if you got those gummy bears in Ontario, Canada, they could be really good gummy bears because it's legal up here to have fun gummy bears.
The fun gummy bears. Yes, yes.
So the two voices you hear are none other than Otto Vondrak, who is the editor of Railroad Model Craftsman. You've been the editor now for years and years.
Years and years, 2 of them to be precise.
Yeah, exactly. And how is that? So 2 years in, how does it feel? Does it feel like you thought it would?
I don't know. Are you supposed to feel your heart beating through your fingertips all the time?
Yeah. I don't want to say the magazine's going so well, but Otto recently moved into a fairly large home that he purchased on the east side of Rochester. Don't want to give out any addresses or anything, but if you happen past 2342 Bonnie Meadow Lane.
Hey, no. It's purely coincidence that I bought this house after I got the promotion.
Purely.
Oh, purely.
And the other voice is our very own beloved Tony Cook, who is the editor of Model Railroad News, the managing editor of Diesel Era. Is that a quarterly or a monthly or what is that?
It is now a quarterly, 4 times a year from White River Productions in its 32nd year.
Holy mackerel. So it started in like 1989.
I think early 90s.
And then you're also you're co-editor of the HO Collector Quarterly.
Yes, and I'm working on the Campbell Soup Train right now. The one that Lifelike did. I just got a whole packet of information on what Campbell sent out to grocery stores on how to promote everything from Swanson TV dinners to chunky soup to this amazing Lifelike train set with all the Campbell's decoration.
Wow.
So always fun HO Collector stuff.
Anything like that coming in, showing up on... I know what I was going to ask you, Otto. I'm going to ask you right on the air. And you don't have to answer, of course, because I'm putting you on the spot. But our very own beloved Uncle Dave Abelies has a couple of articles in the that have been that our RMC has, and he's dying to be on the cover. I'm just telling you that.
I'll see what we can work out. We have a couple of nice articles coming from Dave that'll be hitting in the next few months. So I'm really anxious to get those out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, anyways, I just said I would put that out there. So. I don't want to put you under any pressure. I know you're trying to, you're down at Home Depot trying to buy a new weed whacker for the new property. So you did you rent a house before, Otto, or is this your first actual? You rented? Were you in a home before or an apartment?
Well, the apartment I was in was kind of like the whole second floor of a house, and lived there for a bunch of years, and the time was right. And by the time is right, I mean my landlord was kicking me out, and so I decided it was a great time to buy a home, and here we are.
And now you're going to have to buy a lawnmower, vacuum, or well, not a vacuum, a lawnmower, a snow shovel, all the accessories that go with the outside of a piece of property. Are you excited about that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I never plan on leaving this place, so.
But you're going to want to be able to see it from.
I don't care what happens outside.
You're going to want to be able to see it from the street.
Yeah.
It was it's like a Norman Rockwell house. It's a beautiful home. So, I mean, you're going to want to.
It is. Yeah, it's a very nice looking house, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I'm really excited. And, I obviously could not do this by myself, but I'm really excited that I was able to jump on this opportunity. I'm looking forward to, of course, the first question everyone's asking me is, never mind the house, what's the basement like? And, So just so everyone out there knows, I already do have a layout in the basement. The 2 modules that I built for Consider the Commuter series a couple years ago, those are now set up in the basement. All my trains are on the workbench. So technically I've started my layout in the basement. So rest assured, editor of Railroad Model Craftsman has a layout in the basement.
And
awesome.
And what's the basement like? It's
nice. It's a cinder block. It's all, it's not a finished basement, but it's a dry basement, and I can stand up in it. So I think there's potential for future activities. We'll see where it takes us.
Now, when you say it's a dry basement, you mean you don't serve alcohol down there?
Yeah.
Oh no! We definitely serve alcohol in the basement.
Okay.
But it is also free of external moisture, which is also probably more important.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, that whole county east of Rochester has been a dry basement area for years.
Well, so. you know how ordinance. I was on the Texas Eagle one night, and I remember them saying that after they got in or out of Arkansas, they were not serving beer. And I'm thinking, who would really know in this superliner whether you are or not? But I mean, they follow the rules. So I thought maybe there's some Rochester City ordinance to no liquor in the basement,
And not long after that, Burt Reynolds and the Snowman showed up and loaded up a tractor trailer full of beer. And
because there's beer in Texarkana.
What I enjoy the most is having to explain the plot to my younger friends about why they had to transport that beer and why you couldn't get that beer in certain places, and blows their mind every time.
Yeah.
Did you know where that I saw an interview with Hal Needham recently where he stated where the inspiration for that came from? They were shooting Gator in Georgia, and the crew had brought from California Coors, and he had some in his refrigerator, like in the motel they were staying at, and it kept disappearing. And he couldn't figure out why it was disappearing. And he finally asked the person cleaning the room, and she said, well, it's Coors. You can't get Coors. And that's why I was taking it. And he was like, didn't realize or something. And that is what he claims was the inspiration behind the beer run for Smokey and the Bandit.
Awesome.
So if not for Gator, we wouldn't have Bandit.
Yeah, we need some sort of a Smokey and the Bandit thing in model railroading. Anyways, enough about us. That's not why we're here tonight. So
it's not.
No, it's not.
No.
The entire podcast is dedicated to White River Productions. And Otto and I were chatting some time ago, and we had talked about how Dave Abelys had a book that came out, and it did very well on sales. And I said, I think the podcast has something to do with that. And then Otto said, geez, I'd really like to get Scott Lupia's paint and detail book out there more. And I happened to speak to my friend David Start, who told him that story. And he goes, that is a great book, that paint and detail book by Scott Lupia. So boom. I thought, well, let's just do this. Then let's have Scott on here and talk all about this great book that he wrote.
Now, before we bring him in, this was a very difficult book for me. And I think there should be a warning. I think it should come in like a brown paper bag with some warning on it. I opened it up, started looking at it. There are Locomotives freight cars. They're out of their original boxes. They've been sawed up, kit bashed. I mean, I got about halfway through it. I put the book down. I had to sleep that night with the lights on, and it just. I mean, the next day I just had to sit in front of all my like Athearn and AHM and Tyco boxes and try to collect myself. That it's not a book for the meek. But that said, I guess let's go ahead and try to get through this.
And then I found out about Scott has a little business too, KV Model. So I want to talk. We're gonna have a grand old. And then Otto is. Did I hear that he is also served as a part-time associate editor of Railroad Model Craftsman?
Yes, he's a past associate editor of RMC, and he's also an engineer for a railroad in New Jersey.
Oh, I know a guy that works for a railroad in New Jersey called New Jersey Transit.
That's weird. We should get these guys together. We should start a club.
We should let's start a club. Okay, Scott, come on into the studio here, buddy. Scott.
There we are.
Oh, there he is. Oh, hey, Scott.
All right.
I don't know if you heard us talking about you.
I heard a little something. I was out brewing beer in my basement and watching Smokey and the Bandit, and, trying to put it all together.
Yeah.
Well, I stuck up for you. I don't think your nose is too big for your face.
No, I don't know. I mean, everything can be fixed.
Oh, okay. Did you not want me to repeat that, Otto?
That was really more of a between us conversation.
Wow. Yeah. Moving right along, it is our guest is Scott Lupia, and it is Scott. We are saying Scott correctly. Is that right?
That's
Scott?
correct.
Thank you. Okay.
So when did you write this book? It's called Paint and Detail Railroad Models with Scott Lupia. When did you write this book?
When Otto sent me a message saying, I think we need to do a book together. Actually, it's got to be several years ago. I might have still been working for RMC when Otto mentioned it. And I was thinking, gee, that'd be pretty cool. I don't think it'll ever happen because that's just, that's too cool. But I can't have that. And next thing I know, probably maybe just before this time last year, Otto said, hey, here's the first chapter. Can you look at it? And all of a sudden it was happening. And then it was messages. Hey, we're going to do another chapter. I need more material. I said, oh, man, I guess I got to do stuff. Fortunately, I have a computer that's just full of projects that I never wrote up. So it was kind of easy to find more material for the book.
So do you have any background in how did you end up as a part-time associate editor for RMC?
Yeah, it's funny. Don Spiro, who a great friend of mine, he's done a lot for RMC the last 20-something years, a lot of writing. And he said, you're funny. We were texting back and forth. He said, you're funny. You should write. And I'm thinking, I don't know about writing. My 7th grade writing teacher said I don't have it, so I never considered writing. But he said, "Nah, you should consider." He took me up to the Karstens corporate campus there in Newton one day, met the whole crew, and next thing you know, I wrote. I think it was an article on the Susquehanna RS1s that just popped out, and next thing you know, I'm just writing articles left and right for the magazine. And at some point, they were looking for a little extra help, and Chris D'Amato asked, and I jumped right in there. It was one of the best things I ever could have done. Great experience.
It's funny, Lionel. I remember when Scott started because I was working for Karstens as like a contractor I was doing the websites, and I was doing occasional articles and scale drawings and layout design and things like that. And I remember Scott's article on the Susquehanna RS1s, and what made it pop out to me was that he modeled them as if they were overheating with all the hood doors open. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Like how that's making the model look lived in and broken down, whatever's happening. It's not what you expect. Would you expect going to someone's layout and seeing, a locomotive with all the doors hanging out? I mean, it was great. And it was also unfortunately around the time when Karstens was kind of in a period of decline. Would you say, Scott? Was that safe?
That's accurate.
And actually, right after Scott started, I had just joined the staff of Railfan, so I was doing Railfan full time, doing some work for RMC part time, and that's when Scott came on.
Okay. And so, this book seems pretty extensive. I've talked to a few people now, and everybody's just like, yeah, that's a great book. That's a great book. So Who was the? Were you the editor, Otto, on this?
Yeah, I was. I've always had this idea to collect Scott's articles into a book because I feel that his techniques are very approachable, and I feel my goal was to have a wide variety of projects in this book, everything from doing major surgery on a locomotive to, simple repaint and detailing. So you could get a broad sense of what's involved in customizing models. And some of these are articles that were previously published. And then, like Scott said, got towards the end of the book, and I'm like, oh man, I need like 3 more chapters. And the funny story is, here's behind the scenes, Scott. You didn't know this. This book was supposed to be 100 pages. It was supposed to be like 98 pages plus cover. And I had it laid out and ready to go. And I was also working on another project for White River, the book that came out just before, the Conrail in Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley. And that was a different project entirely. And that was designed from the start to be 128 pages hardcover. So both projects I'm working on simultaneously. And somehow I got in my mind, I'm like, oh no, I'm like 20 pages short on this book. Scott, we need more content. And then we're going to press, and I'm talking with Kevin Udaly, the publisher. He calls me up. He's like, hey, I'm just working on the accounting form here. Wasn't it supposed to be 100 pages softcover? And I'm like, now it's 128 pages softcover. And that's why Scott was in a dead panic, getting me a couple of extra stories. But like Scott said, he had them on his computer. They were just kind of waiting for the right publication slot. So it all worked out in the end. So that's what's great about this book. It's a combination of old content and new content. Plus, it's not just a straight reprint from the magazine. We've gone back and did a little prototype research, because everything that Scott is modeling in here is based off a prototype. And so we've got a lot of nice prototype background on these models, so you can actually see what we're trying to model in each project.
On the cover is an F unit, Seaboard Coastline F unit, SCL. And I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous with a ton of detail. And
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So whose manufacturer is that, Scott, that locomotive?
That's one of my favorite engines. One of my favorite projects ever. That is a Broadway Limited E6. The Seaboard, I'm trying to remember the article. The Seaboard Coastline had, I think it was an E3 that was in an accident, and it was rebuilt as an E6. So that article was basically on taking that Broadway Limited engine and turning it into that engine. The neat thing about that article was that is the first time I ever included my own etched parts in a detailing article. I had custom etched some side panels to get the unique porthole design and some of the other parts that are on the engine that are sort of unique to that engine. I had put that in that article. And then we did a little sidebar on how to do your own etched parts. So I took the reader through the process of setting up the artwork. I think I talked a little bit about the different metals you can use and why, what's good and what's bad about them. And it really gave the reader an idea of, this is how you do it in case you do want to do it, because you can't really model this engine unless you have the etched parts for it. So hopefully, and actually I do know of at least one other modeler that took that article and ran with it and had some parts made. It was kind of funny because I was in one of the forums and he showed a picture of one of the frets that he had made. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, God, that's one of my frets. It's the little tags and everything on there. It's mine. And I'm thinking, I don't remember doing that. And then I read it, like, oh, wow. He basically used verbatim what I did and came out with the successful set that he used for his own diesels. And that's, all you ever want to do when you write these articles, you always wonder, is somebody actually going to do anything with this? Or are they just looking at the pictures and then, off to the next month? Somebody's actually doing something. So we did something right there.
Well, that's the cool thing, isn't it? When even if one person takes your article and does something with it, it's like, wow, like you've somebody out there has, and I mean, you three guys have been involved in the publishing, and you and Tony and Otto, especially with being editors. I mean, do you guys ever get a sense of you got to get this right because there's like people out there reading this? Like, or do you always kind of feel like are you always detached from the fact that there's readers? Did that make any sense at all?
No, I actually that makes total sense because I think about that as I'm doing a project, and I'll get through the end of the project, I'll get through the article, writing it, and then I'll realize I missed a step, and it's a small detail, but I'm thinking to myself, the easy bet is just ignore it. I mean, nobody's going to ever build this thing anyway, but you know what? There's that one guy that's going to build it. He's going to get to the end and realize he missed something, and it's not in the article, and then somehow I'll feel like an idiot. So I make sure I get everything right.
Geez, I don't need to miss a step in an article to feel like an idiot. That's pretty much. So Otto, do you get that sense like, the magazine goes out every month and, you get a sense of you got to get it right because there are people out there that are kind of counting on what you're doing because they're going to be reading this and looking for the next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every month when we're picking stories for RMC, I'm always thinking, what's the reader going to do with this? Is he going to use this article and build exactly what is in here? I mean, sometimes we get articles about very specific, like, I'm modeling Santa Fe engine 12345 as it appeared in May of 1963 on a June Saturday afternoon. And, the very specific steps that they're taking to make a very specific model. I think what people are learning from an article like that is look at the steps that this person took to create this model. Maybe you're not making this exact model as it's presented here, but you can still take those skills and apply them to something you're building. Or maybe it's something even more common. Whatever it is, I'm always thinking, what's the reader going to take away from this? Is this something they're going to sit down and build themselves, or they're going to take away the skills in the process and apply that to something else? I thought it was interesting in the book. One of my favorite projects is kit bashing a steel caboose. And this was using a kit. It's a wooden Craftsman kit that makes a model of a Lackawanna wood-bodied caboose. And what happened was the Chicago and Illinois Midland bought a couple of these cabooses from the Lackawanna, brought them to their shops, rebuilt them with steel sheathing, and kept them in service for another 20, 30 years. Scott took this model. He took the base kit with the wood body, and he applied styrene sheathing to simulate the steel. And this is not a model I'm going to build. But I'm like, wait, that's really interesting. Like applying the sheathing over the body, like the real railroad did when they were rebuilding the caboose themselves. That's an example of like a skill that you could take and apply to a different project. But I think, like you said about leaving out steps, it's really interesting. We published a story 2 years ago. A guy built a beautiful model of a Burlington Northern business car that he kit bashed from the Cotto streamlined stainless steel model. And article went to press, and I remember we're doing press approvals, and something didn't quite look right. And I'm like, it's probably just me, and I let it go. I get the magazine back 2 weeks later, and I open it up, and I'm like, there's no end railings. There's openings where the end railings should be, but there's no end railings. And I look at the prototype photos, and I'm like, yep, there's some steel bars at the end of the vestibule where there should be some railings. So I emailed the author. I'm like, I don't mean to be a jerk, and there's something we could do about it now, but did you forget to put the railings into the end of the model? He's like, I totally did.
Wow.
And I'm like, it's no big deal. It's still a great model, and I think it's still a good process. And of all the thousands of readers out there, only one person took the time to be like, hey, were there supposed to be railing? I'm like, yes. But, and maybe other people noticed and they were too nice to write in, but no, it happens. But even when things like that do happen, I think, first of all, if no one notices that it goes to press that way, well, then maybe it wasn't that important. Maybe it's not that important until you're actually holding the model in your hands. So who knows? But I think the most important thing, like I said, that I look for is what will the reader take away? And I hope that they at least get some idea of the process and the skills that were used to create this model and get them thinking about how they could build their own models in a similar fashion.
So, Tony, like for you, you're not doing how-to articles, but lately in Model Railroad News, like I've been hearing more and more how people enjoy, like you'll do a review of a particular locomotive or car, and you've got a whole backstory, about the actual car or locomotive, and like it's the same thing, same question to you. Like, do you feel like you're writing, you keep getting all this stuff organized, and you're thinking to yourself, I got to get this right because there's people out there that are reading this, and it matters.
It is, and I enjoy the prototype aspect and having the space that we're fortunate to have in Model Railroad News to go a little bit beyond just a few pictures of the model and say 500 to 1,000 words. I have that ability, and to be able to do that, yeah, there's a lot of times when something comes in, I'm like scouring for a picture. Like I've got to find a picture of that paint scheme on that model, and I'll start looking on eBay for slides and digging through the White River collection. And it's always frustrating as I get closer. I still don't have a prototype picture for that. I don't want to go to press till we have that side of the story. And the feedback on it is, it's very strong. That I've had people that say I don't model some of these scales, but I read the reviews of these HO items and I'm in, or vice versa. And I like it because I always learn something about, Jeep 35s or locomotives of Western Pacific or something that they didn't know before. And that's always fun. And HO Collector, the fun thing there in getting the stuff right is kind of nailing down that history. And it's always fun to get that feedback when someone says, oh, I'd never realized that like that F unit was also in this product line before, or they made this change to it. And I never put together that was the same tooling and that it did this or that, through the course of its availability in the hobby. And that kind of stuff is always fun when you're kind of connecting those dots of history, and somebody that's been a long time collector says, I never knew that, or I'd never figured that out or saw that before. And that's really awesome. So that's a lot of fun. I mean, that again, it's something that we all enjoy, but it's double fun when you get a letter or an email saying, hey, that was so neat to learn how to do etched metal details, or, to find out that this or that F unit was made by 3 different companies and I only had this one. Now I got to get the other 2. And that's one thing on Scott's book. I will say, because I am not a big, craftsman level modeler, but as I went through the book, I did see that again and again of not only were we looking at a project like the Cabooses, turning them from wood side to look like they were steel sheathed, or like the E unit with the etched metal, but all of those things I found interesting, whether or not that was a particular railroad or prototype that might particularly interest me, that just that's a neat idea. Or as Otto said, it's, all that's of value to multiple other things beyond, I think I'm going to make that CNIM Caboose, or I might do that Seaboard E6. Like, okay, that may not be all that likely, but yeah, that the application of the ideas is really neat.
I think Tony brings up a great point. And by the way, don't let Tony fool you, folks. Tony's actually a really good custom painter. I've seen some of his work. It's snuck out from time to time. And I think, Scott, wasn't one of the projects in this book, you just took it on because you thought, oh, that's a neat prototype, I could do that. And it wasn't your primary modeling interests are Eastern, Lackawanna, Susquehanna, things like that. You modeled a Southern Pacific RDC. What's that all about?
I don't even remember how that came to be. I think Chris D'Amato had asked me to do something West Coast, and I might have had an RDC just sitting there. My friend, a good friend of mine, he's not with us anymore, Mike Radinsky's a big SP guy, and he said, oh, you should check out this one SP RDC, and it was just such an oddball. I had to do it. But yeah, that's one of the things I've always enjoyed, the stepping out of your comfort zone. I mean, I could model Erie Lackawanna engines, all day long. Lehigh Valley engines, no problem. Minimal research, it's all up there. Then you step in SP. I mean, I know nothing about this, so I enjoy the research end of it as much as the actual modeling. So, hunting down the photos, the story, that's that's appealing to me. So that's why you would see an engine like that, or the Seaboard Coastline E6. It's the beauty of, hey, that's cool. I would just want to do that. And I think some people get a little bit too bogged down by their prototype, and they sort of forget that feeling of hopping into the car and going on a road trip, and you're out of your zone, you're out of your territory, and you see a train, and you're excited because it's a train. You like trains, and it's it's the same type of thing. It's just allow yourself to do something that's not what you're supposed to be doing, because it's fun. Why not?
I would bet that we all have models on our shelf or in our yard or whatever that don't fit our prototype, but we pick them up because we thought they're cool. And then when our friends come over, we have to be like, oh gosh, I know it's not my prototype. And you have to like explain it away and be all embarrassed. Who cares? Like, you thought it's cool and it's on your railroad. Like, I think like you said, Scott, we have to like keep having fun in the hobby and not be such a slave to our chosen prototype.
That's it exactly. I mean, I'm a locomotive engineer. I'm on trains all day long, and I deal with the serious end of it, the rules and everything that you don't. That's not. I mean, what we do in our basements is for fun. What I do out there it's the job, and so to come home and to start to try to enjoy my hobby, you really have to focus on the fun end of it. And a lot of people, I do think, lose sight of what's actually fun about it. And allow yourself to go pick up those Santa Fe F units. Everybody has them. They'll tell you they don't, but they do. Everybody has Santa Fe F units.
Yeah, you have
Let yourself do it.
So I incorrectly identified the locomotive on the cover as an F unit. What's the easiest way to tell the difference between an E unit and an F unit?
Don't ask a Canadian podcasting host.
And how did you get in here, Tony? I forget.
Well, since this is my last show, I just thought
I thought you two drove together.
Yeah. We started out that way.
Yeah. I gotta see how good the shoe leather is on my shoes, because I guess I'm walking home.
So what is because I got a couple of comments about first off, what's an easy way for somebody to differentiate between an F unit and an E unit?
I mean, the F units are just they're 2-axle trucks, so there's four wheel or 4 axles. E units 6 axles, so the E units are bigger. They usually had 2 prime movers. The F units were a single prime mover, and
primarily the length and the 6 axles.
That's basically it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think anything else to it other than that.
All right. Well, it's away from. Obviously, I couldn't tell. And,
in your defense, the shot was a very tight nose shot, so I don't think you could tell.
Well, except for if I was really looking hard, I would have looked at the truck. So now I can hear a whole lot of people out there saying right now, "Oh, well, I'm not buying this book because I'm not an expert modeler. I'm not a craftsman. I'm not one of those things. So there's really no point in me buying this book." But I don't think, from what I've seen, that really applies to this book, because really what you guys have tried to do is you don't have to be a craftsman to get something useful out of this book. And on your way to being a craftsman, let me help you get there.
Yeah, that's you can get whatever you want out of this book if you want to sit there and study the projects and and do what I'm doing to fully, and even go beyond that. You can do it. It's there for you. If you just want to put some windshield wipers on and cab sunshades, you can do it. It's it'll show you how to do that. I always loved ideas. Show me ideas. I want to see everybody, because I'm going to figure out what I want to do based on all those ideas. This is a big collection of ideas. You can look at this and find which ideas make sense to you and work from that. It's it's not a paint by number book. You don't have to see color. You can just do whatever you want. You can get those Santa Fe F units. It's okay.
Right. And then just add to, we were almost losing you there, but you're in a, basically your point was there's something in this book for everybody. There's there's some. That's the way I took the book. Was, I mean, it's really well put together. I mean, you guys, White River Productions is like, man, it's just like stepped up to the plate in the last. It's always been a good company. It's always been quality productions. But I don't know. It seems to me in the last 5 years, would that be the timeline? I mean, it just seems to me in the last 5 to, I'm going to say half dozen years, it's just the White River Productions has really stepped up to the plate, and everything they put out just seems like I mean, I said to Otto once, and I've said it to Tony. I mean, I'll go into I'll go into a bookstore looking for a Christmas gift, or I'll go into a bookstore for some other reason, or I'll pass my favorite magazine place, and there will be, your guys, and I end up buying them all because they look so good. It's like something you want to have and hold in your hands. What
I need to give a shout out to our graphic designer Todd Gillette, who I also work with on Railroad Model Craftsman. He does all the layout for Railroad Model Craftsman, and I had him do the layout for this book. And it's funny because I do the layout for Railfin and Railroad. I'm the art director on that side. And I do some layout design on RMC. But Todd has always had a really good mind for taking all the disparate pieces of a modeling article and laying it out in a way that makes sense for a reader. And he, if you like how the paint and detail book turned out, that's because of Todd. He really made it shine here, and I can't thank him enough for doing that.
It's a great book. I mean, it really is. I mean, once like I say, my friend David Stark told me what a great. I mean, he immediately said, I said, oh, eventually we're going to talk to Scott Lupia, and he says, oh, that's a great book. That's a great book. So I mean, you guys are to be commended. And Tony, you do most of the layout of Railroad Model Railroad.
No, they don't let me do any layout on Railroad. That's why it looks so good.
No, Model Railroad News. Don't you do most of the layout of that?
Yes, the 3 titles I work on, I also do the layout.
On all 3 of them?
Yes.
What, like, do you ever sleep?
Well, of course I do. And I take a nap in the afternoon a lot.
When you're not watching Smokey and the Bandit.
Well, and that to me has become, it's weird how my hobby, I just turned 55 this year, and I feel like I've gone from operating and doing stuff. Otto talked about having seen some of my custom paint work. It's probably been 20 years since I really painted and decaled anything, but that was something that I really enjoyed doing and, would get back to if I had the time. Then collecting became very, near and dear to me and still is. But now it's odd that like laying out and doing the magazine stuff, those are my projects, like what Scott is doing with models, that reviews and presentations like an HO Collector or Diesel Era. That to me has become the hobby for me, that I enjoy bringing that together. And it's almost like doing a clinic, across 6 pages of here's this or that information. And it's interesting how there's so many facets to the hobby that I feel like, I've kind of played in each one of those positions over the years and enjoy them all.
Don't you think that, though, Scott, that this White River Productions stuff is just top notch? I mean, it's basically the best in the hobby at this point, is it not?
I remember the first time I saw an issue of RMC under the White River banner, and the paper, I had never seen RMC look like this before. It's one thing when you see articles published and the paper is kind of like the onion skin paper that they used to write train orders on, and the colors are kind of like, that's sort of what it looks like. But then when you see it put together, it just so beautifully and presented so beautifully. I mean, RMC is a very special magazine to me. There's a lot of history there, and it is now looking like it should be looking. It's a very, very special magazine, and the way everything is laid out, the way it's printed, it's definitely it's a good time to be an RMC fan, because it's never looked so good.
Well, but stay tuned, the thing, and this is something my dad has said to me a number of times. He goes, what I like so much about what Otto does, and obviously I am saying this is my dad, so this is not an unbiased opinion of White River by any stretch, but he'll say, RMC to me always seemed like it needed an overhaul and needed to be more contemporary. And it got that, but then I didn't feel like it was still exactly RMC. And he said, then when Otto started doing it, we got like the Boomer Trail back. I am fortunate to get to do collector consists for him. And I do agree that now I feel like, it's got the improvement, but now it's my old friend RMC again, that it's not, it has the look and feel of what it was, but done really spectacularly. So yeah, as Scott, that's great. This is a great time to be an RMC reader because this is an enhanced version of RMC.
And that most recent edition of Diesel Era just blew my socks off. And every edition of MR News that comes by now just blows my socks off. I mean, what you guys doing? So, I mean, really, I guess the point I'm trying to make is you pick up this paint and detail railroad models by Scott Lupia. I mean, you're not going to be disappointed. There is something in this book for everybody. I mean, even the photos are like kind of jaw-dropping. I mean, I love when the articles about building the Susquehanna RS1 and all that stuff. Can I have that? Do you still have that locomotive, Scott?
I was going to say, well, you've hit a soft point there because I know that's Lionel's favorite diesel is an RS1. So yep.
Yeah.
Scott, which came first, working for a railroad, or were you a model train guy from being a kid?
I was always a model train guy. My grandfathers were both Lackawanna men. They were in the mechanical department. I had uncles that worked for the Erie Lackawanna, and it skipped a generation. My father was a teacher, but I started out. I was an architect for a little period of time, and I saw what my friends were doing that I went to high school with that were working for New Jersey Transit, and I just couldn't see my life, the rest of my life, living in this little office, doing stuff in an office. I wanted to be outside doing stuff, and it's I'll never forget the freedom of going to work on the railroad where after you do all the training and everything, okay, here's your assignment. Go out there. The train's out there. Do what you're supposed to do. The schedule will tell you where to be, what to do, but you know what to do. You do it. There's nobody looking over your shoulder. It's you and your crew. That's it.
They just trust you with the train. They just let you have it.
I mean, now they know better because, they 20 years, they know me, but they probably wouldn't make that mistake again. But, originally they did. So, yeah, at one point they trusted me. But
Scott, were you saying once that you were working the same territory that your grandfather worked on?
Yeah. I work the Morrison Essex line between Dover and it was Dover and Hoboken. I would run between Dover and New York on the Midtown Direct trains. But yeah, it's I can remember taking train rides with him in the early 80s. I was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, riding on the old MUs with him, and now I'm running those lines now. It's such a great feeling.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And
really cool.
And I know a guy. If anybody's unhappy with one of the stations on the New Jersey Transit, I know a guy. just to get in contact with me, and I know a guy. So so Scott, I have a question for you because you seemed like now we're going to get talking about KV models too, but so many models now are sold incredibly detailed. But a great part of the hobby, which I think is kind of not lost so much, but I mean, 30 years ago, I enjoyed getting the Atlas Cato Jeep 7 and, putting the details on it, or the Stuart F units and putting the details on them. So where are you in that? Like, are you glad that diesel locomotives are manufactured now so highly detailed, or do you kind of long for the days when you took a halfway shell and turned it into something?
No, absolutely. No, I love that you look at the work that Rapido is doing. I mean, Atlas Model, everybody has really stepped up the game, and the greater detail is it's what the hobby needs. I mean, if you were going to try to sell old blue box cars with tooling from the 70s or 60s, whatever it was today, it'd be a bit of a turnoff. They were great for the time, but today it's just. The manufacturers are giving you what people need, and these super detailed engines, they're really great. But the beautiful thing is there's still stuff you can do to them, and I guess it if anything, it just focuses people more on the beauty of detail in engines, which, I mean, I sell etched detail parts all day long. I obviously have a thing for details, so people are seeing what I see when I look at an engine, and they're appreciating what I appreciate. So that's, that it's the best thing that the manufacturers could do.
So all right, so you sell. So tell us about KV models. What exactly does it? What's its spot in the hobby? What does it do? What does it sell?
Mainly etched detail parts for HO scale locomotives. I've put that there's a little bit of steam stuff there, a little freight stuff, some passenger stuff, but it's mainly etched details for diesels. It started with the lifelike / proto SW9 and HO. I was modeling some Lehigh Valley pups with the dynamic brakes, and I worked on an SW1500 at work, and that the front screens and the radiator, the way the radiator grid shows through the screens, and the big fan in the front, it was just lacking from the model. And I wanted my engines to look like what I'm working on at work. And a good friend of mine, Brian Busset, he owns Eastern Seaboard Models. He's been kind of a mentor to me with a lot of things, but he was making his own etched parts, the artwork, and he said, "This is all you have to do. It's easy. Just go do it." It's not like he held my hand or anything, but it's kind of one of those things where he gave me the tools, and before you know it, I'm having etched parts made. And
before we go on, there's a whole lot of people out there that have no idea what an etched part is. So is there an easy way to explain to us what that is?
It's a thin sheet of metal, usually like 0.13 millimeters thick. It's a little bit thicker than the thickness of paper. And I draw artwork for it, and where I send the artwork, they do this photo process where they put this piece of metal in acid, and it eats away certain parts and basically leaves you with a fine piece of metal that has detail etched into it or completely etched away, like screens, cab sunshades, windshield wipers. It's all etched.
And why is that better than why is that better than plastic? Because you can get an even more defined detail part. Is that why?
Yeah, you can go smaller and retain durability. Plastic, usually because it's molded, you need to have. That's why plastic details are usually like molded on grab irons or stirrups. They're usually oversized because when you get to a certain size, they just become too fragile and they go away. So that's where etched detail parts come in, the etched metal. Excuse me. I love stainless steel. I mean, some people don't like it because you can't chemically blacken it, but stainless steel, I found that it's definitely sturdy in the thinner metals that I tend to use for very thin screens. It'll hold up if you hit it with your finger. It's not going to disappear on you. And I can etch very, very fine without the detail getting soft. It's always crisp. So pretty much everything I do is etched stainless.
So stainless steel. So somehow you draw up the plans on your computer, and then you send them to a company that has a process. You're not dying on us, are you?
I could be. I don't know. I saw a raccoon out there eating a cat's food. There's a good chance that this could be it. Buy my book quick.
Yeah, buy his book quick. Yeah, if you want an autographed copy, you got a limited time to get it.
You're out of luck. Otto will take that for me.
Yeah. So somehow you draw up plans for a detail part, say a sunshade for an RS1, and then you send it to a company that somehow burns or etches away, and you end up with a stainless steel piece of stainless steel detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sounds like it would be incredibly expensive.
It is. I mean, it depends. It all depends. The R&D end of it is where things get expensive. I mean, if I can design a part and hit it right the first time, then that's great because now I'm saving myself the shipping costs, the etch costs, the setup costs, the process costs. But I do have some parts where I've been revising them for 2 years now, so I don't think I'll ever make a dime on those. But I want to get them because they're cool and people need them. So it can be expensive or it can't be. It depends how good you are at doing it, I guess.
So, okay, so I'm on your page now here, KV Models, which is pretty straightforward. kvmodels.com. I can't get any simpler than that. Okay.
What does the KV stand for, Scott?
Very
Kaiser
good question.
Valley.
Yeah. Kaiser Valley. I know
Kaiser
that
Valley.
name.
That was the beginning of my Lackawanna heritage. My grandfather worked in the shops in Kaiser Valley for Scranton, or in Scranton for the Lackawanna. So that is sort of the root of my railroading heritage, Kaiser Valley shops.
And did you get it? Did you get that URL first try? Like, did that idea came to you, and like, boom, you went to get the URL, and it was available like that?
I kind of got lucky because the idea for KV Models, I actually did a Caboose kit in N scale, a resin Caboose kit, late 90s. I mean, I don't even know how I ever put that thing out because I'm terrible at resin. And
how old are you? How old are you? Like 72 or something?
I just hit the big 45.
Wow. I mean, you've done Otto. Why haven't you done as much as this guy?
Because I'm only 44. I'm catching up.
Okay.
Oh, see.
He's been an architect. He's a locomotive engineer.
I know. How do you keep up with it? First of all, he has a train. How am I supposed to keep up when he's on a train?
Yeah, exactly. And then he did a resin kit, and then now that's KV Models. He's written this book. Like, holy mackerel! You two guys should try to keep up. I mean, seriously.
A competition or something, maybe.
Yeah,
that could be scary. Actually, never mind.
So all right, you were starting to tell us about this resin kit.
Okay, yeah, so I came out with this little resin kit. So that was the first time KV Models ever had anything. And it was out and it was gone, and that was that. I think that's when I started working for the railroad, and that was it. My free time went away. And sometime maybe, I think 2017, that's when I started making these etched parts, and demand got to it. There was such a demand for these parts that it was time to actually form an LLC and do something real with it. And,
so who's using these parts on what models? If all the models that are being produced nowadays from companies like Intermountain and Scale Trains and Bowser and Rapido, all these models come out with all these beautiful detail parts on them. Who's buying KV Models etched detail parts?
Believe it or not, there are a lot of I'm sure there's a ton of beautiful models out there that you give me a mechanism and a decent body, and I can turn that thing into a contest winner. And there's a lot of for years now, engines have been good runners and decent bodies. So I have people that buy my parts, they put them on blue box models, Avid blue box models, the Lifelike, the Proto SW9 that came out, and I think that was the 90s. It's still the model still has merit. I mean, it's a great runner. It's got a good body. You put parts on it, and you've got it's an amazing looking model. So there's plenty out there. The old Stuart Baldwins, that's one of my favorite. I mean, I remember the first time I made a detail part for a Baldwin. I didn't even like Baldwins. Like, they're weird looking engines. And then I picked one up and I started running this little S12. This is the coolest little engine. Next thing out, and then I'm working on VO660s, a DR. Too many letters and numbers, but they're great engines. You can pick them up for like $45. And once you start putting the details on them, and the big thing for me is sound. I love sound. Between Loc Sound and Soundtrack's Tsunami and Wow Sound, you put something like that in it, and the thing just comes alive. So there's plenty to do out there. The sky's the limit.
So is it fair to say that the book is not necessarily aimed towards, but it's for people that are looking to do some scratch detailing with older diesels from the 80s and 90s kind of thing? I mean, I've got...
Oh, absolutely.
Once Cato started making the chassis for a lot of these locomotives, and Stuart, I mean, I got locomotives that are 35 years old that still run as good as the day I bought them almost. I mean, they run, and they've run... I mean, I've got some locomotives I tried to figure out. I think I got some HO scale locomotives that have run several hundred miles in actual distance, around the layout, and they still run like the day I bought them. So is there a big, and I'll ask this question to all three of you guys, is there still a big part of the hobby that's these models are living on through people that want to detail them? And like okay, let's ask this question. This is and somebody help me as I stumble along here. But no, but I'm fascinated. I'm sitting here looking at some of my older locomotives, and it's like I liked detailing them. And now all these models come out with these spectacular detail. Are there people that do you think there are people that are under the age of 40 that are interested in buying these older locomotives to do detailing?
Not only are there, I hear from them all the time. In fact, HO Collector that's third quarter of 2021, Brian Bana does the old FlexiFlow Roco made hopper that was sold by AHM about 1970. And he states right up front, Rapido makes a fantastic model of this. It just came out. But this was something he enjoyed doing in the hobby, and that has now become a facet of his hobby, is he works within those parameters of, I'm going to take a Blue Box locomotive, or I'm going to take one of these old, like AHM freight cars. And we do basically an RMC build type article in HO Collector of this, what would now be why would anybody do that when there's this great Rapido car? But again, as he said, this is fun for him. This is his entertainment or his quality time in the hobby, is to take something, and he knows full well that, I know there's a really good model of it, but this is fun to do. And he goes through the whole process of bending the wire and making, grab irons and everything for it. And it's, I'd never thought of it. I say that in the editorial. I said, I almost feel like I'm apologizing here that we're running a how-to article in HO Collector, but I'm not so much really running this as it would be in Railroad Model Craftsman to tell you how to do this, so much as I'm maybe putting a spotlight on guys that do this, and to say that this is a valid, pursuit, because again, it's all entertainment. We do this for fun. So what does it matter if there is a stellar model out there? As Brian Bana states in his thing, I can buy these at a show for $5. So if I tear it up or do something to it, I don't feel bad. I'll just go get another. And right. So it's a fun thing that doesn't cost a lot.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Tony, because we just ran an article in the August issue of it was in the June issue of RMC, where an author takes an old Mantua steam engine that he's had for a long time, and it has sentimental attachment, and he had the gearing and the motor rebuilt so it'd be more reliable, and then he set out and he did some light detailing to it, so it was a little more in line with the newer models he was buying, and he wasn't trying to super detail it, but he wanted to just have the right amount of detail so it didn't stick out as a toy train engine in his scale model fleet. And wouldn't you believe, I got one nasty letter from a guy who couldn't believe that we would waste pages on something that doesn't belong in Railroad Model Craftsman. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that this guy taking this engine, rebuilding it and detailing it is exactly what Craftsman is all about. Mm-hmm. I may be biased, but I buy some new models for myself, and today's locomotives and freight cars, they come super detailed out of the box. And quite frankly, I'm even afraid to take them out of the box because I'm like, you know what? All this detail is beautiful. And I know I'm just going to break it off. It's going to get just through handling or derailment or just living life. You're going to break off all these fiddly little parts. And I think there are people who would rather start out with low or mid-grade models, detail them to the point where they want them. Maybe it doesn't need to show every pipe and every detail, but they want to have the right amount of detail so it looks right, but not so much detail that they think things are going to break off just by staring at it funny, And I think, even with today's super detailed models, there's things to change, to alter. And I think that's what we try to address specifically in this book. I think the scariest thing you can do is to take a factory painted, factory detailed model that's perfect and take a hacksaw to it or alter or re-letter it or renumber it because it was perfect. It was perfect when you got it. Now there's a chance you could mess up. And I think that is everyone's fear, that you will mess it up beyond all recognition. You can't recover. And you totally messed up your investment in this engine. Why even bother? And I think what we try to say over and over again, you can do it. Maybe an overly complex project shouldn't be your first one, but you can do it. There's different levels of doing it. Ease into the process that's right for you.
Yeah, I think there's something in that book, really, as you go through it. There's something in there that anybody can take from it and use at any level of skill. Like, I think that's something that's really, really important as we go forward here is there's more and more people coming to the hobby that didn't start it as a kid or haven't had it as much exposure to the hobby as they do now. They never were people to go to conventions or join their local group, and now they're being able to connect with modelers. And, the hobby is becoming much more interesting, for lack of a better word, to them. And now, the book like this is like, it's not just about you have to be a fantastic modeler. You can be somewhere in between a beginner and a fantastic modeler, and there's something there for you. Everybody can enjoy the hobby now at all different levels.
Actually, it's funny. Otto brought something up about you get a finely detailed locomotive and you're afraid to break it. That is one thing that with all these locomotives coming with all this superior detail and all the fragile little bits attached, the beautiful thing about having a little craftsman inside of you and being able to do stuff is if you do break off a sunshade or break a stirrup or break anything, you can fix it. Yeah, if you get some phosphor bronze wire or get a sunshade, you can fix it. So read the book, because even if you don't want a super detail or cut apart engines, there's going to come a time where you're going to have to fix something, and it'll help you do it. It's simple, but it's something that you see all the time. How people are always you get something and there's just damage right out of the box. Well, you can fix it. It's not the end of the world.
Scott, what was it like? What was it like building your first custom model?
I'm trying to think. My first custom model, actually, I remember doing it very well, and this goes back to the pre-RMC days for me, where I took an N scale Lifelike 060, and I turned it into a Lackawanna Camelback 060 somehow. I don't know how I did it, but I remember sitting at and this is probably one of the first, definitely, it's the first project I ever had where my butt was glued to that seat. And I couldn't do it fast enough because it just, the creative energy was there, and I just wanted to do this thing. And it came out great. I mean, as far as a Lifelike 060 can come out, I mean, it was just, you're talking like a 1980s N-scale steam engine.
Right.
But I remember I showed it. I went to my friend's store in Kenville Hobbies, and Don Spiro was there, and I had it with me. He looked at it, and he's like, what is this? Nobody's doing this. I don't know anybody that's doing this in N-scale. And then I went to some railroad picnic on the Middletown and Unionville or something with him, and Bob Mahowski was there, and I showed this to Bob, and he was like the second voice in my head that was like, you have to write for RMC, this is fantastic. And so it was just like that one stupid little 060 that I think I might have sold it on eBay probably like 6 months after I made the thing. That's how much it meant to me. But it was the process. A lot of stuff is about the process. It's you get that creative burst. You just got to do it. And then, you do it and you're like, okay, this is great. Next, there it sits on the shelf and ends up on eBay. But it was probably that 060 was the first thing that ever really hit me hard.
It's really cool how varied the hobby has become. So do you build custom models, Scott, or do you just like you have? I've been looking at your KV models site while we've been talking. Actually, mostly while Otto was talking because I got bored. But that was rude. Now that was rude, and I apologize.
Well played.
That was very rude. I apologize, Otto. You know that's rude.
This is actually a very accurate window into railroad life. This is what it's like working on the railroad. You are going to get your best friend is going to take a shot at you as soon as he gets the opportunity. You're going to smile and laugh because it's how it is. That's great.
Well, Scott, and I have a question for you because you've been involved with RMC and not necessarily from the White River Productions end of things, but you've been involved in RMC, and so you've been around those publications and Railfan and Railroad. Are you familiar with Railfan and Railroad?
Oh, absolutely.
Here's a proposal I put out several years ago that I have yet to see any traction on, and you're probably what?
Can I go ahead? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Just get it over with.
Can I finish, please?
No,
Can I finish?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yep, sorry. Go ahead.
Yep.
So, anyways, it's Railfan and Railroad, and it's confusing. I always had trouble remembering is it Railfan and Railroad or Railroad and Railfan, and I put up the proposal years ago that what about alternate months? Like in January it's Railfan and Railroad, February it's Railroad and Railfan. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I forget which month has 30 days and 31 days. So at some point, it's just going to be called the wrong thing completely, and it'll probably just vanish. So I'm not the one to comment on that one.
Well, go ahead and comment anyway, Scott. Now you sound like a politician. All right.
Well, I mean, they both start with R, so alphabetically, it's not going to lose. It's not going to lose anything that way. So. Go for it.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to pitch what we have. The next time I make my proposal, I'm going to put that in there. They both start with R. What difference does it make? It's not going to follow.
Exactly.
Well, and Scott did add to this too I never thought about it, but the days with 30 days and the days with 31 days, you could come up with some kind of logic on that's how you'd flip the name around. And I never thought of that. So suddenly this crazy argument I'm beginning to buy into.
Makes sense to me.
So do you produce any detail parts for the new locomotives, or this is all it seems to me that most of your detail parts are for, when would the cutoff time be? When did you guys are in the hobby, Otto and what's your name, Tony? You guys have been in the publishing end of the hobby for years and information into the hobby for years now. When was the cutoff date? When did we start seeing these incredibly detailed locomotives and cars? Who kicked that can over and started that ball rolling?
I mean, you get some odd things here and there, all the way back to the Athearn Trainmaster of 79 or 80 got an SP version and a regular version, and then they did that again for the tunnel motors, got an SP light package. So there's been a little of that. But I think kind of the serious road specific by road name, by road number kind of started hitting in the 90s. I remember maybe it was our early 2000s with Atlas's SD24, not the one that Roco did for them in the 70s, but their contemporary one. That it's one of the first models I can remember because they even did like the Santa Fe SD26 rebuild. They did the high hood CB&Q with all the light package. There might have been something else, but yeah, that has been an article I've been asked on HO Collector. What was the first? And that at least has been in my head of, I think it's that. And when I sit down to do that article, I got to prove that. But so when about 2000?
Yeah. When do you think, Otto, that this crazy race towards unbelievably detailed models started?
I think it was towards the end of the 90s. I think we saw, an inch forward with Bachmann's, Spectrum line.
Right.
And then that followed up, we saw the Proto 2000 line from Lifelike. And that was a definite shift because in the hobby, I think we always knew Bachmann and Lifelike to be a little bit more of down market models. They made mass market train sets. They, molded on grab irons and all that. And all of a sudden there's this shift where it's like, no, we're making accurate models with separately applied details. And everyone's like, but this can't be. How could this be? And what I'm told is that behind the scenes, at the time you had two major factories in Hong Kong and, making most of the model railroad manufacturing. And the factories went to the manufacturers and they're like, we can make better stuff if you ask us to. And yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing the conversation, but
right.
The factories are like, we're capable of doing more. We don't have to do this molded one body, slap trucks on it. We can do more. And I think that got the manufacturers thinking, because also, and Tony can talk more to this, but it's like how moving from research and development to tooling to manufacturing, to make your money back on that tooling, you had to pump out 10,000 or 20,000 of a piece. And it had to be just generic enough where you could offer it in 20 road names, because there was no just-in-time manufacturing and there was no computer-aided drafting and modeling. Once you went into tooling, you were committed, and that was it. And you certainly weren't paying a factory to apply separate details. So I think the factory's willingness to step up their game and be more involved in the process, and also the advent of better, more computer-aided drafting and engineering. I mean, a lot of times the model manufacturers, they will share with us a 3D render built from the drawings, the engineering drawings that they're working on, that the tooling will be made from. And they can do so much more troubleshooting in software before they even get to tooling. They're making far fewer changes in tooling because they're able to do all this drafting and rendering ahead of time. And I think it's all just built off of this process we've seen in the last 25 years as the process gets more precise. And now we just see the manufacturers are saying, hey, do you want 5 copies of this one really goofy prototype? Here it is. You got it. Like, we can do that now. It's affordable. And it really is fascinating, like, how much the process has changed since we were younger.
When did Blackstone start manufacturing their stuff? Because I remember that was kind of a holy mackerel moment too.
It's mid 2000s, and fully assembled. I mean, narrow gauge was always, here's a block of wood, go at it.
or Tony, think about how Bachmann kind of blew up a narrow gauge when they introduced their ON30 line off the shelf.
Yeah.
And then here comes Blackstone with their HON3 line. Like, now you could grab products off the shelf and be a narrow gauge modeler. I think that blew open the hobby in a different way because a couple of companies took a risk on a very specific niche product, and I think the risk paid off because we're seeing more and more. It's snowballed, and I think like that risk they took with narrow gauge, we're seeing the manufacturers take risks on prototypes we never thought we'd see mass produced, brass or otherwise. We're seeing crazy things being produced I don't think we'd ever dream of ever seeing done.
Yeah, things have changed so much, and I guess that's why I keep thinking with this book. It's kind of like, there's a lot of information in this book that it's like, I don't think any modeler could buy this book and feel like they start reading it and feel like, well, I didn't need to spend that money, because there is just a ton of stuff in this book that is very usable. I mean, it's $24.95. I mean, MSRP, and it's like, really? That's it? Because that's like 3 magazines, 3 months worth of magazines, pretty much, or 4. What is it? 3 or 4? 3.
Well, and what I like about this too, Lionel, is that it's modern techniques.
Yeah. I think that's important. We need to when was the book released?
Just this past year, and all the content is from the last 10 or 15 years of publishing.
Okay, so this podcast isn't going to be released till November of 2025, folks. So just this past year. Just past year was which year? 2020, 2021.
It's hard to. They all blur together now. But the book came out towards the end of 2020.
Okay, so basically, the book is, when we listen to this, which will be in the fall of 2021. The book isn't even a year old.
That's right.
It's not even a year old. So it's yeah. I mean, it's all modern techniques. Even the front, even the first chapter, set up your work area and tools, and it's just tons of stuff. And anybody that wants, and I want to ask you, Scott, about, some of these pictures on your website for KV models, it's just spectacular. in the gallery section. It's like do you have a layout, or do you just are you just a model? Not just. I think that's important too. Help me with this, you two guys. Help me with this, all three of you. I think people have a tendency to think that unless you build a layout, you're not a model railroader. And I'm finding more and more and more that the hobby is becoming, hey, I just like to build stuff. I just like to build locomotives, or I just like to build and detail freight cars. Like, you don't necessarily, the hobby isn't about you have to have a 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 layout. It can be just about building models and enjoying that process.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the, and maybe other hobbies are that way too. And because I'm not a stamp collector, I don't know this, but I feel like that's one thing. If somebody said, what is so neat about model railroading? Well, what would you like to do? Do you want to operate stuff? Do you want to build stuff? Would you like to collect stuff? Do you want to learn about the real railroads and the relationship with things, so you could buy models? So, okay, this is an auto carrier and it transports vehicles. I mean, there's so many facets to it that even if you're a lifetime model railroader, there's always something new of, well, have you ever custom painted before? Or have you ever done scenery stuff? It's like, no, I've never really done that. It's like, well, jump in. And I think that's the neat thing, is that there's so many aspects to it that, well, it's what you make of it. What would you like to do?
Yeah. I was talking to Bernard Helen, the fellow that owns Mini Prints. And he had a glass display case that he bought at IKEA with 4 different shelves, all glass. And they were like 12 by 18 inches. And there's a whole group of people that build dioramas to fit in this glass display case. And I could see people doing that. I think they were called debt cloths. I wrote it down somewhere. I got to find it. This is fascinating stuff. Now, of course, that's the worst thing to do on a podcast, is go give out partial information.
No, you're doing great. Everything's fine.
Boy, I
said Otto at Salt Lake, letting Karen Black know, I think the landing gear's down. You're going to be fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. Don't give me that. Let's not get started on that. I mean, my ending to Airport 75 is perfect. Which one was it? Was it Airport 75?
It's 75. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't know how you're disappointed in 75's ending, when like 77, all they do is balloons under a 747 to get it up out of the Bermuda Triangle, and it goes right back down.
Scott, here's my problem with Airport 75.
Uh-oh.
This is going to be a never-ending debate until Tony finally sees things my way. So it's about how a small 2-engine private plane ends up hitting the cockpit of a 747, sucks out the first officer, does incredible damage. The only way they can to save these folks, because the stewardess is now flying the plane because the pilot is so injured. The stewardess is flying the plane and on autopilot and making adjustments. So then they decide they're going to drop a guy into the plane. And of course, the first guy was Ensign Ricky, and he gets, the cable gets cut and he disappears. So then they drop in Chuck Heston, which of course works out perfectly because it's Charlton Heston.
Right.
And so Chuck gets into the plane, and of course him and Karen Black, who plays the stewardess, they have a love triangle thing going, and so then Chuck gets in the plane, and he just basically simply lands it. Like, the whole side of the cockpit is blown out, and the last 15 minutes of this movie is, well, he lands the plane, and there's a bulb burnt out that doesn't tell him that the landing gear's down. It's like, that's it? Like, it shouldn't it be like the hydraulics for the whole right side of the plane are gone, and they need to land it on a flatbed trailer, but nothing. It's just, okay, we'll land it. Now, look at that. The dashboard has a bulb burnt out.
Well, he did have his one hand is bandaged. He cut his hand getting into the plane. So
I was asking Scott now. Have you
all right. Okay.
Have you ever seen Airport 75, Scott?
I feel like I have, after hearing your description of it. I pretty much have a good feel for it. And all I know is that is exactly how I felt at the end of Wizard of Oz, when it just turns out it was all a dream. And what a cop-out. The bulbs burned out? Seriously? It was all a dream?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, can't do this.
Otto, where are you? Where do you fall on this particular subject?
quite frankly, the ending of Saint Elsewhere is a huge letdown. Yeah.
I thought it was a great ending. All right. So, okay, Scott. All right, Scott. So, some of the gallery photos on your website are spectacular. So the original question was, do you have a layout? Are you just like this one shot here, inside an engine house?
Oh, the engine house.
Yeah, it's spectacular.
Yeah, I love that.
It's spectacular.
That was a classic moment of I think I was sitting in the office at old RMC with Bill Schomburg, and I think it was just kind of like somebody said, nobody's ever modeled inside an engine house, or somehow it got brought up. And I thought to myself, it just brought me back to, I can't remember where I had this, maybe it was at work or something, of an early morning, just walking through an engine house, or maybe it's an engine facility or something, and just seeing light streaming in through the windows, this dank, dark, cavernous space, and just seeing how thick the air is, but the light is just cutting through it like butter. And so I decided I got to model that. So I modeled, I put together a little module just for photography, because I love model railroad photography. That's I love building models, but there's just something about photographing them and making them look lifelike, or capturing a feeling, or I mean, I'm okay with the camera on like regular stuff like railfan photography, but model railroad photography, I'm so much better at that. I don't know why, but I built that scene just for photography, just for taking pictures for that. We did an article. It was in one of the issues of RMC, and I was just like, nobody's ever done this before. Not that I remember anyway. And so it was time to do it. And I've been using that thing. It's a little photo diagram. I've been using that forever. It's a perfect little scene for shooting.
It's a great setting. Yeah, I love it. Every time it pops up, I recognize it.
So
yeah, definitely.
So we need to make sure that people understand if they go to. So let's review. How do we buy this book now? If you go to White River Productions, if you just Google Scott Lupia, Lupia. Scott is Scott, as in Scott Thornton, deadweight. I managed to get that in there. We love you. We love you, Scott. He's Iowa scaled engineering fame. No. Yeah, yes, Iowa scaled engineering, IWS.
And they used to contribute to your charity until that one podcast where you derided Scott Thornton, I think.
No, yeah. I got to get Michael Peterson back on here. I got to get Nathan Holmes on here too, because everybody talks about him. So anyways, I went to, if you Google that, you'll end up at White River Productions bookstore, or you can just go to whiteriverproductions.com and go to their bookstore, and boom, it's right there. And I think it's important that we indicate to people, the table of contents is set up your work area, disabled pen central chief. Most of the titles are about building an individual model, but as you go through each chapter, there are tips and tricks and everything about how to paint, how to weather, the whole 9 yards. Would that be a correct way of saying it, Otto?
Yeah, no, I think, like we said, we tried to get the widest variety of steam and diesel and passenger and freight and cabooses and, different eras, different prototypes. It's not all Eastern, not all Western. It's not all HO scale. There's actually a bunch of N scale projects in here. There's also a narrow gauge project here. One of the projects is painting and detailing a couple of Blackstone K27s. So I kind of feel like there's something for everyone. And if you go to the White River bookstore, you search for Scott Lupia, you search for paint and detail, and it'll pop right up.
Yep, and just hit it to your card, $24.95. Boom, you can't go wrong. And I'm telling you, it's a good book. You're not going to be disappointed. It's a perfect book for Roger Coleman, who is new to the hobby, who found the hobby. I was listening to a half-hour interview we did with him, me and Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, and he is the stereotype of what I said. He was on the YouTube. He had found a channel where it's cab rides. It's live streaming of cab rides through Europe. And then YouTube did their algorithm and suggested maybe he'd like some videos about model railroads. And then he kind of discovered model railroading. And I mean, this all happened in his 50s. And he's the perfect candidate for one of these books because it tells you all sorts of things. I really feel like it's important for us to make sure that people don't feel this book is just for the high-end modeler. It's for everybody.
And that's, Clem Harris, our one friend is he an Amtrak engineer or BNS? Yes. Yeah. That Shane Mason, my assistant editor, recommended him for the review in Model Railroad News. And that's online. If you go to modelrailroadnews.com and look under product reviews, as you scroll through the pages, you'll find most of Clem's review of this book. And he titled his review, "You Can Do It."
Wow.
And that was his, basically his takeaway from after going through the book and he states that I do weathering, I do that. And Clem does some great stuff. He would be that person you're saying that is of that craftsman level. And that's his whole point of coming away from reviewing the book was, yeah, you can do this. That by going through this book, it's like, well, you got to know a lot more than what they're just showing you here in these couple of pages. It's like, no, he felt like it really laid out the groundwork for, yeah, I'm going to try this. And I never have before, but I'm going to do one.
So,
and that's actually why I titled the introduction, "You Can Paint and Detail Models." That's the title of the introduction because everyone has it within themselves. You just try it, you start doing it, and the more you do it, the more fun you're going to have.
So let's go through this. How do we find that review on the website, Tony?
Modelrailroadnews.com.
Right.
And then across the tabs, you'll see features, and there'll be MRN News, product reviews. You hit product reviews, and then you'll have to scroll back a couple of pages, but you'll see an entry for "You Can Do It, Paint and Detail Railroad Models with Scott Lupia." And there's Clem Harris's review, and I even reproduced a couple of spreads of the Caboose, the Lackawanna Caboose project. So you get a look at kind of the how-to steps and how the book is laid out.
All right, I'm gonna keep looking for this here because this is important for me to find this. I'm on the third page. I've probably passed it already. November 20. Have I passed it yet? Let's see.
It was posted February 15th of 2021.
All right, so I'm going to go back the other way then.
But I forget what order that all that's, yeah.
Well, yeah, they seem to, whoever's in charge of this has done a very good job of keeping it in order.
It goes in order. Yeah, I think
it is. I found it. You Can Do It. By Clem Harris. I was asked by Shane Mason to review Paint and Detailed Railroad Models with Scott Lupia. Man, I have to admit that this is my first review of a book, so don't beat me up. We'll beat you up anyways. I'm always looking for new ideas and techniques for weathering and expanding the boundaries of detail work, and I enjoy reading on one. This is wow. This is a great review of this book. I'll try to remember to put the link for this review in when I post this particular interview. This is great. Wow. Good job, Scott. Wow.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. White Rivers, Paint and Detail Railroad Models opens with "You Can Paint and Detail Models." That resonates with me for all the reasons Scott's mentioned. Man, it's a great review. Wow.
So what's the next frontier for you, Scott? 3D printing? More? I mean,
yes.
What stuff has kind of got you thinking, hey, I'm going to try this next?
Yeah, it is funny you mentioned 3D printing because I'm a 2D designer and 3D is the next step for me. So I'm seeing some really nice things being done with these SLA, whatever they are, printers or whatever. So that's definitely something I'm going to want to look into because etched parts basically 2-dimensional. You can't get that much thickness into a part. So 3D printing is the next place that I need to be. So that's on the horizon.
That's cool. How about this, Otto and Tony? When you order the book, tell them Lionel sent you. Will that help?
I don't think that the warehouse will charge any more. You might get, Homeland Security may make a just preliminary check on you if they mention your name. But other than that, no, I think it's fine.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I think we've covered it all. Have we missed anything, Scott or Otto or Tony? Have we missed anything you guys wanted to cover about this?
I think that was pretty thorough. I don't think there's anything else, Ted.
That's the way that's the way everything I ever did in high school was graded. Yeah, that was pretty thorough. Translation. My every report card I ever got in my life said, if Lionel put in more effort, he could do better.
Well, to that, you remember Ronald Reagan's big speech, was it when he went back to his college in Illinois when he was president? And he said, when I went here, I only got like C's. Imagine if I would have applied myself, what I might have done.
Yeah, exactly.
So there you go.
If I put in more effort, I'd have
put in more effort. I could have gone farther than I did in life.
Exactly. And I ruined the entire school system, and because the hippies were starting to come in, and they made the passing grade in high school 50, and I went, okay, so 55's good then. Is that where we're at? All right, I think we covered everything here. It's really great to. What's coming up? What's exciting? What do you see in the year 2022, Otto, for Railroad? Not 2021. What do you see in the year 2022 for Railroad Model Craftsman?
Oh gosh, we're going to keep bringing quality articles, more in-depth features, maybe more pages. Who knows? But we're always going to try to push the envelope wherever we can, and we're looking forward to hearing from everyone because we make this magazine for you, not for me. So, like I always say, it's the readers that drive this thing. So, but
is that a real possibility? More pages? Are you guys working towards that, trying to continually expand the magazine?
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school that, the way publishing works, advertising subsidizes the cost of producing the magazine. And we strive really hard to maintain a balance between editorial pages and advertising pages. And, we've got a lot of strong support from manufacturers that, we're starting to run out of room to put ads in the magazine. And it's like, that's really a good point to say, hey, do we go up in pages and do we have the content to fill that? Yes, I'm sitting on content for years. But we can't do it without the support of our advertisers. We can't do it without the support of subscribers. So, and the support of our dealers and hobby shops as well. And fortunately that support's been there. But, if you like any of our magazines, tell your friends to subscribe. We are not a major corporation at White River. We are a small family-owned business. That is literally the truth. The company is Kevin and Nadine Udaley and a loyal staff of office workers in Kansas City. We're not a big glass tower somewhere. We're not a cast of thousands. So literally, when you purchase one of our magazines or books or you subscribe, you're literally supporting a small family business. You're keeping Tony and I off the streets. But if you like our magazines, tell your friends and have them subscribe, or go to your local hobby shop and pick up the magazine there, or have your local supermarket or bookstore carry the magazine. We need your help, and with your help, we can grow together.
That's exactly it. Although I see the White River Productions magazines as they're never going away. They are starting to capture a part of the market that I don't think is ever going away. Tony, what's going to be coming up in 2022? What's new? What do you see in 2022 with the hobby? I mean, you got your finger on the pulse of the hobby. Every product that's ever made passes through your hands, it seems like. And I think you're on every possible YouTube, model railroading YouTube program there is. Like everywhere from Train World to Scale Trains to Athern to, is there any show you haven't been on?
Tyco has not asked me to be on their show yet.
Oh. Okay.
And that personally hurts me. That's really close to my heart. So I know they've not made trains since the early 90s, but I think if we got a YouTube show going, I could probably turn that around, and it's just not happening so far.
On the manufacturing side, I'm kind of interested to see what happens with Aurora Miniatures and KR models.
Keith, yeah. I think we'll see. I think we're going to see more of those kind of companies. One of the things we're looking at in Model Railroad News is, it's funny, Otto mentioned that on pages, that Shane and I are kind of pushing and talking for that too. And we'd like to have more coverage of 3D things. I think I've mentioned maybe to you at some point recently that I had somebody say, I wish there was a magazine or section of yours that just covered 3D printed things that were new in the hobby. And again, it's like, well, we're kind of bumping our heads at the 100-page mark now. So I don't really have we'll try to work more in, but it would be nice, to have more pages and have basically a section on the different things you can find, whether it be shapeways or, various things that's becoming a whole facet of the hobby.
We're recording this in the summer of 2021, early summer. This will be broadcast in the fall of 2021, a few months out. And when you mentioned 3D, of course, by now, the 3D rendition of yours truly, the evil overlord Lionel, has swept the nation.
Yep.
How many did you buy, Otto?
I've got 3 on my layout right now.
Are they all tied to the track?
They are all tied to the track.
There you go.
One's already missing his head.
Oh,
what? Why'd you say that? That was weird.
When I first saw this, what is it? Bernard
and Helen
Mini Prints did this. And Otto, you may have thought the same thing. When you saw the little figure of Lionel was going to be available, didn't you remember as a kid with like firecrackers and army men and blowing things up that you thought, I may need a box of those? Yeah, that was my thought. Yeah.
Okay, Scott, what are you excited about coming up in the future of the hobby? Like right around the corner, you're going to get more involved in 3D printing, you're thinking? Anything else?
That was the plan. I don't know. I'm pretty at random. I mean, I might wake up tomorrow and decide that I'm going to do something completely different and turn everything around. So you never know. I mean, I have a production schedule that I pretty much just throw out the window on a daily basis. So you never know. I've been really wanting to put some more Alco parts out there, and I keep threatening to do some modern stuff. So that the Kato -9 is going to be seeing some stuff happening in the very, very near future. But 3D printing. I'm hoping maybe sometime 2022 I can start working my way through that.
Cool. And I want you to. I'm begging you, Scott. I'm begging you. I beseech you that when I start to push this Railfan Railroad thing, alternate months, please jump on board with me on that one because I feel like you'll have some pull.
I said that they're both ours, so I think that pretty much that just sealed the deal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Railfan, Railroad, Railfan. I mean, we're not removing any words. We're not removing the ampersand. Is that what you call it? The ampersand thing, where it's the and instead, or is it a word and, or is it the ampersand thing? What is that? What is that sign called? The for and?
It's an ampersand.
Ampersand.
Yeah. Ampersand. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were all silent, like as if you couldn't believe I actually knew that.
It was the first thing I learned in ampersand school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like you guys are all looking at each other like, did you just hear what he said?
Ampersand? Did he just make that up? What the heck is that?
I was Googling it to see if maybe in Canada it refers to something different, Like, no, that's not what they call that there, yeah.
All right.
Hey, you hoser, go get an ampersand out of the shed with the hose.
Exactly, yeah. No. We call that a weed whacker. They call it an ampersand.
Beauty, eh?
Beauty, eh?
Tony, can you give out our email address?
There is an email address if you would like to email A Modeler's Life. And do they actually read them? I mean, we say this, but where do they go?
We constantly viewer mail is getting is picking up.
Oh, that's great. Yes. So if you would like to have your thoughts read out in a podcast and viewer mail, it's modelerslife@gmail.com, and that's modelers with one L, or is it two L's? Because there's an L in modeler, but there's also an L in life.
That's modelers. We're just talking about the word model.
Oh, okay.
That's modelers with one L, like Lupia.
Okay.
Not two L's, like anything? Cadillac?
Not ampersand.
Not ampersand.
No, Cadillac?
I guess Cadillac, yeah.
Lincoln Continental?
Well, I think you got more L's there. Lincoln has two L's.
There you go. There you go. The second one's silent. Like the L and like the L in solder. Sold solder. Don't get Marty Jenkins started on that. He's Australian and it's solder. And we also have a website at modelerslife.com. If you go there, you'll see all kinds of cool stuff. And if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, in a particularly agitated state. You can just click on his picture, and boom, you won't even need to remember the email address. You'll just automatically come up, and all you got to do is fill in your text. And if you go to Midwest Model Railroad, their website, which is midwestmodelrr.com, and you scroll across the navigation bar and click on AML, boom, you are in our wonderland of AML merchandise. Hats, hoodies, T-shirts, mugs, anything you could possibly need.
Is that why they made that 3D figure view? Are they going to do a 1-to-1 that'll be like a mannequin at Midwest Model Railroad, just sell hats and shirts?
I was completely against it, but Bernie Helen from Mini Prints wanted to do something to help me with my one more year where I raised money for the cancer hospital, Princess Margaret Hospital, and so he came up with this idea. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Could we not make a 3D print of something else? And then it turned out really good. But my son says, oh, look, it's got that permanent sneer on your face.
Then it's accurate. It's authentic.
Yeah. Me in shorts. Okay, that's it. I think we're done. So now, Scott, at the exact moment, at the appropriate moment, you have to say happy rails to you.
Okay.
Okay, because this is episode such and such, Scott Lupia, and then all about your book. So this has been all about you, Scott.
Wow. We get to practice this, or is this just like a one shot? That's it.
You just got to wing it. You got one shot, man. That's it.
Shot. This is like Chuck Heston in Airport.
Oh yeah,
75. Man, you got to put this puppy down on the tarmac and.
But that first guy, they tried to lower him into the cockpit. They don't even know where he is.
They never found him. He was Ensign Ricky from Star Trek, and the last 15 minutes of the movie are. Oh, okay. Well, it looks like we got a ball boat on the dash, but let's land this puppy anyways. And that's it. And there's a gigantic hole in the right-hand side of the plane, and they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. And there's all these wires and everything. And apparently everything's working fine, except for a couple of lights out on the dash. Okay. Well, Scott, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy rails to you.
There was a bit of a pause there.
I wanted to build a little bit of tension.
Oh,
no, that worked. Yeah, no, that was good. That was good.
Kind of a dramatic pause there. Yeah.
But it was kind of a happy rails to you. Like
was the plane going to crash? Or was just the bulb out?
You got to have gusto. You got to happy rails to you.
Really?
I think he confidently landed the plane.
It was very tentative and like not sure as if this was a good idea. He's kind of wishing he'd never came. It sounded like.
Well, I mean,
but see, you don't know. That's the key. It's the Mona Lisa smile. Nobody knows.
All right. Well, let's try it again, just for old time's sake.
Should I act it out through interpretive dance?
Yeah, that would be good.
Oh.
No, there's no interpretation.
No, that's
we don't do it. There's no singing. There's no interpretive dance. It's just simply happy rails to you with enthusiasm.
But you don't say with enthusiasm because I've asked that before.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Because I bet weren't you were going to say it. Yeah, I know. See, and he thinks I'm crazy because but anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to text my wife and just see what she would do.
Yeah, see, it's just happy rails to you and you say it enthusiastically.
Enthusiastic. Okay, I can do that.
All right. Well, Scott, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy rails to you.
Island Busted Knuckle, guests of a Modeler's Life podcast, stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.